Okay, so today is the 10th of March 2022, and we'll pay homage to an important French architect, Hector Guimard. So let's read a little bit about him. But before we read a little about him, I usually, before I show any pictures, I read a few things about him. But in this case, we have a few pictures of him. And he does look, yes, like an interesting man. So Hector Guimard, the 10th of March, 1867. So Le Corbusier was 11 years younger than Hector Guimard, was a French architect and designer and a prominent figure of the Art Nouveau style. He achieved early fame with his design for the Castel Béranger, the first Art Nouveau apartment building in Paris. Now, I don't know if it is truly a castle or castle, but we'll see it, which was selected in a 1899 competition as one of the best new building facades in the city. He is best known for the glass and iron edicules or canopies with ornamental Art Nouveau curves, which he designed to cover the entrances of the first stations of the Paris Metro, the subway stations in Paris. Between 1890 and 1930, Guimard designed and built some 50 buildings, in addition to 141 subway entrances for Paris Metro, as well as numerous pieces of furniture and other decorative works. So quite an activity. I mean, just 141 subway entrances, incredible, and around 50 buildings. However, in the 1910s, Art Nouveau, in the 1910s, Art Nouveau went out of fashion, and by the 1960s, most of his works had been demolished, and only 2 of his original metro edicules were still in place. What a tragedy. Guimard's critical reputation revived in the 1960s, in part due to subsequent acquisitions of his work by the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and art historians have noted the originality and importance of his architectural and decorative works. You see, this is a tragedy. It's not a tragedy of the dimensions of what's happening in Ukraine now, but it is a tragedy when the taste of a certain period of time decides that something is not good and burns and destroys and so on. It's unacceptable, but it is happening. France, which is a cultivated country and with an important history, cultural history and civilization, you know, they just demolished almost all his buildings. I mean, it's unbelievable. Well, it happened. So let's look at he was truly a remarkable architect, and to destroy such works just because the dogma of simplistic modernistic design was ruling at the time is just sad. So this is what he said. I love architecture because in its essence, in its structure, in its function, and in all of its manifestations, it contains within itself every one of the other arts without exception. Beautiful, beautiful. But unfortunately, there are still many who don't even think of a possible, vicinity, at least, between architecture and art. Again, this is Hector Guimard. And here he is at his drafting board in a room which the minimalist would consider unacceptable, but the minimalist is just one between many. So what the minimalist thinks and feels is subjective. Drawings, some drawings of Hector Guimard. I personally think the ornament brings joy to the maker. It's a release of creative forces that exist within all of us, and to just think in terms of vertical lines and horizontal lines and 90 degrees angles. As Zaha Hadid said, you know, in nature there are 360 degrees. Why are we using only one? So another drawing by Hector Guimard, you know, a project, details, you know, again, you know, I truly think art will save architecture, you know, because I think in most architects, even if they don't recognize it, there is an artist somewhere, somehow. Anyone who enters a school of architecture has somewhere an artistic corner, so to speak, an artistic sensibility. And if that artistic sensibility is, you know, restricted and persecuted, it's a loss. It's a loss for that person, but also for architecture. Now, yes, in the name of art, there were excesses and there were even mistakes, because architecture is a special kind of art. There is a distance, there is a certain distance between architecture and art. But there is a distinction, but there are also bridges. So, you know, if there were no bridges, why do schools of architecture, those that have an entrance examination, require those who apply to have either a portfolio with drawings or to pass an examination with drawings? Why? You know, they don't do the same thing at the technical schools. So obviously, you know, there is a side that is artistic. And what else is here if we look at, you know, how are you going to do an aesthetical work or an aesthetically charged work if the artistic side of architecture is not there? Now, in the case of Art Nouveau, of course, the artistic, you know, material or substance is richer. But it exists. Even in minimalism, there is an artistic sensibility that manifests itself. It's just sad, it's heartbreaking to hear that, I mean, this is a modern architect, actually, you know, to have his, most of his buildings demolished. It's unbelievable, you know, and in Europe, in France, of all places. Just because there was no time at that time, his works were not understood. Now we begin with this Café Concert au Grand Neptune. It was destroyed in 1910 from 1888. Look at this. Can you believe it? Can you believe that this was destroyed? And where? In Paris, Exposition Universelle. But most buildings that belong to or belonged to international exhibitions are destroyed. That's why also that incredible building by Yanis Xenakis and Le Corbusier, the Philips Pavilion, was destroyed. You know, so nothing any longer takes us by surprise. The Palace of Electricity, you know, and the electricity it is indeed. Anyway, this was from 1900, the exhibition of 1900. You know, when I see such buildings, I do have a nostalgia for even for the Beaux-Arts mentality and activities, because there is richness here, you know, whatever we might say, there is richness. Now, 1891, Hotel Rosé, Rue Boileau. Boileau was an interesting theoretician of culture, and I only remember one statement he made. that a good work has l'esprit de géométrie and l'esprit de finesse. So this good work has both the spirit of geometry, you could say this is structure, and l'esprit de finesse, the spirit of fineness, the gracefulness, which is, I would say it's ornament. So you have structure and ornament, l'esprit de géométrie and l'esprit de finesse. That's what Boileau said, but this is just the name given to that street on which this little building, I don't know until when it survived, or if it survived until the present. I don't know, this is the side, and this is the main elevation, I guess. Well, it's true, his buildings are, you know, a little bit, you know, difficult for an austere vision of architecture because they are picturesque, they are, you know, romantically sweet sometimes, but I do think, you know, again, if Hector Guimard was a very important architect, you just don't destroy, in my opinion, the worst building by the best architect is better than the best building of a, you know, less architect. Because I think even in their mistakes, the important architects or the important artists do something interesting somewhere. You know, they might fail, but I don't know. I'm tempted to trust them. I mean, even this, you know, the doorway, you know, this gate, it's a creation. Okay, it might not satisfy all tastes, but it's a creation. It's original. Of course, they don't have the perfection of the beautiful trees or vegetation that surrounds the building. Now, Sépulture, Victor Rose, and Cimetière, this is in the cemetery, I don't know which cemetery, Cimetière de Batignolles, 1892. Architects at the end of in the 19th century and before, and also a little bit at the beginning of the 20th century, they built for the afterlife, for Domus Eterna. This is not happening now very often, although there are some exceptions now as well. Villa, I said, yes, the 1893. Actually, this looks similar to maybe it changed its name, because we already saw it actually, but not so clearly as in this picture. Now, it does seem that here is the staircase, right? I mean, it's not, it cannot be anything else. Another sepulture, building for the dead. Another sepulture, 1895. Here I see the name, I guess, of it's not the same. Yes, I guess the owner or someone from this family that ordered this building found his or her eternal sleep or peace here, you know. Anyway. Rather monumental. I mean, it's not the most modest, you know, sepulture I ever saw. It's not. But anyway, now we arrive at this important work that we read about it, Le Castel Béranger, Rue La Fontaine, 1895, 1898. And here it is, part of the urban fabric. And it's, you know, a block of flats, if I am to call it so. Yes, he had a romantic vision of architecture. He was not the only one. There were other architects who worked, in the Art Nouveau, current or movement, or I don't know how to call it. This is not yet as radical as, well, the gate is. And this gate, I think, would make envious perhaps even Victor Horta, the Belgian great Art Nouveau architect. It's a very fine gate, It's, again, it's dynamic. It's charged as artistically, and so is the whole lobby of the building. You can imagine the architect, when he designed this wall, he designed it. In other words, he expressed, his emotions, his feelings, his thoughts. It's not just a blank white wall as we do these days. Some people would say this is too heavy, it's too busy. Yeah, from one point of view, but from the point of view of the Baroque architect, or someone who likes the Baroque or the Rococo even, this is not excessive at all. But it is a creation, and it's just the lobby, the entrance into a block of flats, essentially, if I am to call it block of flats. Well, the only thing that we might sympathize with is the floor, but even the floor, you see, it's not blank. It's not, it has itself, certain elements of sensitivity, if I am to call it so, but compared to the walls and the ceiling, is much more subdued. Well, this is our world here, right? It is like this. Now, is it really such a progress from here to here? It depends how you look at it. I mean, certainly this window is an event, or bow window. It's an event. And it's also in the corner of the building. And, there is an animal here that who knows what story it might tell, and what symbolism it might have. So, look how it is done. This requires skill. This requires study. We don't do such things any longer, really, because we are too busy to cover the world with as many buildings in the shortest time possible. Of course, who is going to pay you, if you work in an architecture office, to work on a so-called simple gate, a few days at least to create this? Now, Villa Berthe, 1896. In my opinion, this was, refurbished somehow. It looks, but who knows? Villa Berthe. This is different from what isn't it? A little bit different. In the drawing, it looks a little bit different from especially from here. And the working drawings. Facade posterior. So in other words, I thought it was the main elevation, but it's the back elevation. Facade posterior, which is maybe the most interesting. That's why it is shown here. So yes, it's this elevation in the back of the building. I don't know if I have an image with the front of the building. Le deuxième étage. It's a diagrammatic drawing. Nothing so special here. Well, it's not even correct because here I see two windows, and in the plan I only see one window left and one window right. So anyway, this drawing doesn't seem to be done by Hector Guimard at all. But there are interesting things here. Well, what are these things here? I don't know. You know, but I think John Ruskin was correct. The most beautiful things in nature are those which are, and in life, are those that are the most useless. These might be useless, but they are the most interesting. You know, well, what is their function? What would the functionalists say they are? I don't know, but they look the most interesting. And they are here, you know, even in a less repaired version of the house. Architect Hector Guimard. Another gate. This one different from the previous one that we saw, but also again showing character and invention, innovation. Why? Because of the ornament. Another sepulture, also at the turn of the century. Ici repose Nelly Chaumier. I don't know who Nelly Chaumier is, but this is her Domus Eterna. Maison Coyeux, Lille, in Lille, 1898. I like this house. Let's see it from afar first. Yeah, I think it's excellent, and I just compare it with the building on the left and the building on the right. This is, you know, Hector Guimard. You can only imagine of the 50 buildings he designed and built. You know, maybe a good number of them were, you know, similarly creative with this one. This one is, I think, stunning. I mean, even today, if you would build such a building, would eclipse most of the other buildings built during the same time. It's you know, in my opinion, it's a stunning building. It's a small building, but you see clearly that there is creativity here. There is art, there is culturalness, there is color, there is everything is coordinated. I would love to live in such a building. You can imagine being here in the balcony or here in this loggia. I don't know. And the arch, it's both modern, but also referring maybe to the Gothic times. And yet it's modern. It's a modern building. Very nice building, in my opinion. Now, of course, the minimalist and the functionalist will say, wow, why is this needed here? And also curved. Well, you know, if we ask such questions, then we cannot answer why did God spend so much creativity on the tail of the peacock or the wings of the butterfly. I mean, even this column, you know, look, it's done in an interesting way. It's, you know, everything is imbued with an artistic spirit. So it's called, let's remember this, from 1898, so it's 124 years old, Maison Coyeux, I hope I pronounce well, it's in Lille. And I think it is seductive because it unites structure with ornament. Here we have structure, but it's also an ornamental structure, as opposed to what's here and what's here. What's here is banality, what's here is banality. This is not banality. And look at the interior also. You know, it's precious. It's like a jewel. I feel like going to Lille right now to see it. And it has a nice store at the bottom, I see, ceramic. The name of the building is written artistically by the author, Hector Guimard. You see what's written here, Arch and art, architecture and art, Paris. Of course, we cannot make every building in the world like this. No, although it might not be a bad idea to have, you know, equally intense creativity in everything we do, but it's not possible. You know, you need a special client, you need a certain budget. This is not done with the least amount of money or with the least amount of time. It's clear. And you cannot do it for anyone. But for certain people, something special, so to speak, can be done. Another villa, Villa Canivet, 1899. This one is more rustic. It says there, Villa Modern Style. That would make us smile now, because we would call this anything but modern. Now, this is how it looks now. That's how it looked when it was considered modern style. I guess, you know, people did take notice of this postcard and really wanted it to look modern. And here it is. Villa La Bluette, 1899. There is something fairy tale about Hector Guimard. It's true. You know, I mean, the capriciousness of certain lines, and, you know, it's a fairy tale architecture in part. And look at these stairs here also. It's a work of imagination. That's what it is. You know, imagination is active here. Now, you might like it or you might not like it, but we have to acknowledge it's a work of imagination. I mean, look at this, you know, look how it is done. He obviously complicated himself. You know, why did he complicate himself? Well, again, God complicated himself too when he designed the peacock's tail or the wings of the butterfly. Why did God lose his time doing that? Well, again, why did Guimard, Hector Guimard, lose his time to make this also asymmetrical and, you know, all kinds of complications? Look at this window, different from this window and different from this window and different from this window and different from this window. But then there are so many equally, you know, capricious differences everywhere in nature. It's life. It's life. Subjectivity is present. Capriciousness is present. Look at this door. You know, why did he do it this way? because he was a creator. That's why. Another sepulture, 1899. Ah, here is someone from that family of that nice building in Lille. Is it? No, I think I'm wrong, although it looks similar, the name. This is the very well designed Domus Eterna, I would say, and more mysterious, still massive, but I think Guimard became more and more knowledgeable and inspired about doing this kind of works. And it is, you know, original if you compare it with the building on the left and on the right. I lived for several months in Paris, and I thought actually to be, after visiting Cimetière Montparnasse, the Montparnasse cemetery, I thought that, you know, you could create, you know, I mean, you have a rectangle 1 meter by 2 meters approximately. What do you do there? You can make, you can express in that's on that surface 1 meter by 2 meters approximately, the quintessence, the essence of the inhabitant, so to speak, the person who died, who is there buried. And you know, and thus if you create a narrative architecture, each grave looks different from the others, because the life of the people who are buried there was different. And you know, yeah, I think such things matter, but we totally neglect the dead these days. You know, we don't think about them. We only think about us, the so-called living ones. Le Castel Val, another castle, if we have to call it a castle. I don't know. I don't like this building so much, but he designed it. It's still Hector Guimard. He could be a little bit infuriating at times because maybe excessive sweetness, or as I said, a gingerbread kind of mentality or aesthetics. Gingerbread house. I could see that. Immeuble Yaced, the beginning of the 20th century. So, you know, the French didn't destroy all his buildings. We just reviewed at least 10 buildings by him. And this is a large apartment building in Paris. He obviously liked difference, you know, difference. You know, there are all these exceptions to the rule that attracted him, you know, like this balcony here, you know, and yeah, he created variation, but there is variation within unity. Hector Guimard. Now, to do something like this, you also need good craftsmen. You cannot, you know, you cannot ask anyone to build something like this. You do need good craftspersons to be able to build in this way. Another castle, the Castel d'Orgeval, drawing, and let's see the building. Here it is. There are awkward things, it's true, you know, like what's going on here. But they are fantastic in a way, you know. There is the world of fantasy is present in the works of Hector Guimard. Maybe at times excessively so. And yes, it is awkward a little bit, this hat of the tower. And, you know, there are some unusual things happening here. He also used stone, as you can see, and stone, you know, the building in this way with stone was not very common in modernism. Sorry for the, you know, it's not very clear, but anyway. Even if the French destroyed a lot of his work, mainly the subway stations that he designed from those 140 or so, still there are a good number of buildings by him alive. You see how he placed, how he played actually with the stones. You know, again, the rigid dogmatic functionalist would protest. Why is it like this and not the other way or whatever? Because architecture also has subjectivity. That's why. Not everything is objective and rational. You make gestures that, like that person said, form follows feeling. Yes, form follows feeling. And architects do have feelings like everybody else. Why not express those feelings? Hotel Guimard. Now, this is an important work, 1909, 1912. Sorry about that picture. I don't know why it's called Hotel Guimard. Maybe it was his own house. But it's a fine building. You know, it's large, but not too large. And yes, has his signature element, so to speak. A certain amount of fluidity, but restrained fluidity. Hotel Guimard. The handrail, the parapet, is itself a creation. And, you know, one that he probably enjoyed generating. The problem, the problem with functionalism is that thinking continuously about function, you forget to think about form. And architecture is about form as well. You need both function and form, not just function. So without form, what would architecture be? There is even a book called The Function of Form. Form itself has a function, which shouldn't be neglected. There are many permutations between the word function and the word form. You know, for example, Louis Kahn said, form evokes function. Louis Sullivan said form follows function, but he was misunderstood because he was also an artist through and through. Bernard Tschumi, for example, said form follows fiction. I mean, he is radically provocative. Form follows fiction. Anyway, others even think that function follows form. It would be actually interesting to make a house respecting such permutations of the relationship between function and form. You make a house illustrating form follows function. You make a house illustrating form evokes function. You make a house illustrating what Tschumi said, form follows fiction, and so on. There are others. Immeuble Trémois, look at this, it's music, you know, it's with physical elements, it's sculptural, it's musical, it's graphic, it's interesting. It's not as wild as, let's say, Antoni Gaudí. This is a restrained organicism, you know, the Art Nouveau. Yes, there are some indulgences in fluidity and sculpturalness, but still restrained. And not totally capricious. They also have to do with structure. Hotel Mezzara. Sorry. I don't know where this is. I should have written where it is situated. It's a hotel particulier. It's, you know, the French use the word hotel a little bit different from, it's actually a lodging, you know, but I don't know if it's temporary or it's some kind of a villa in a way. Look at this little window here, you know. I mean, yeah, some would say it's too small. Is it really necessary? But it's one of the eyes of the building. It has many, or a good number of them. Interesting how the sloping roofing is insinuating itself here at the corner between this side and the other side. There are interesting things here, you know, delicious little details that make the building, you know, enjoyable. And the inside is also, you know, rich and rather impressive. Hector Guimard. Villa from 1913 is include there's some elements of something that we saw previously. If we look more carefully at his work, we see certain elements that might create what we call a signature architecture. It becomes more fantastic in a way towards the roof, towards the top of the building, and some, you know, idiosyncratic medievalisms or Gothicisms. It's a curious and interesting architect. Maybe at times a little bit whimsical, too whimsical, maybe. From 1913. A synagogue from 1913 as well. Rather interesting, you know, between two buildings. Perfectly symmetrical. I mean, the front elevation. Impressive interior space, narrow and tall. Immeuble de bureau, an office building. So again, even if the French destroyed many of his structures, there are still many that remained. I guess the destruction, the demolition referred mainly to the subway stations, which maybe, you know, for rational reasons, they became inadequate. It's possible. But he also built so many that, you know, from 140 something, they had, you know, a large amount to choose from. So this is an office building with a pharmacy, with a, you know, drugstore at the bottom. Architect Hector Guimard. Hotel Particulier, 1921, 1922. Nice works with these bow windows, and you know, they all always bring something interesting. Bow windows, they are fine architectural devices. And more Guimard. Let's see what I showed here. Subway stations. And yes, you know, these subway stations could take one by surprise, but then so do the subway stations of Otto Wagner in Vienna, who also designed a lot in Vienna, but the Viennese didn't destroy them. I also show here furniture by Hector Guimard. We are approaching the end of this presentation. Very interesting pieces of furniture as well. Slender, graceful, sculptural, very well done. And again, you cannot do this in the absence of the right craftsman. You can draw it, but it's not enough if you want to build it. A very fine gate. Artistically charged, very much so. Now Castel Béranger we already saw, but it's, we look at the gate. We saw it already. We saw the building. There is variation, there is richness. There are all these details that contribute to the richness of the, you know, experiencing the building. I mean, look at this handrail, you know, it's an artwork in itself. Would such a handrail make you a better person? Would such a handrail make Putin change his mind about the war in Ukraine? I don't know. Maybe Rem Koolhaas was right. Human beings don't learn anything. But maybe they do. Maybe Koolhaas was too pessimistic and too cynical. Maybe such a handrail in certain circumstances could make one change a little bit, maybe. If that one thinks a little bit about the, you know, the object. Now, of course, this thing could have been just with a vertical pipe and that's it. Why did he create this? Well, you know, again, the peacock's tail. As of the handrail here is about the peacock's tail that John Ruskin referred to when he said the most beautiful things in life are the most useless. And here we see the endless column by Brâncuș, don't we? It's literally about the power of invention, about the power of imagination. It's creating, you know, memorable little details that contribute to the richness of the building. We saw this one. It's you know, very graceful and very expressive, and yes, very capricious. This is a graphic work that connects with what we look here in concrete terms. Hector Guimard. Now we arrive at the subway stations. The few, I guess only two are still alive, which is very sad. They are indeed the peacock's tail. I see them as such. The Metropolitan Metro. Some images repeat themselves. I should shorten a little bit the presentation. Um, Hotel Mezzara, we already saw it. I don't know what's wrong with my presentation. I had a feeling it's a little bit too old, too large because it has over 300 pictures. I'm beginning to regret that I added this material to make my case more convincing. Um, I went a little bit too far, I would say. Now, this is like a review, an aide-memoire of what we already saw. Let's put it this way. But there are also images that I didn't show previously. We saw this building before. Art Nouveau, indeed. We saw this one, but not this one. Also, Hector Guimard, I don't understand why I'm repeating some. It's true, it's my work. I guess I wanted to investigate more images, but it's just tiring. I'm sorry, there are too many pictures of the same thing, although not necessarily the same pictures. But we already saw this building. I should be a little more wise and shorten the presentation. I'm beginning to be a little tired myself a bit. There's too many pictures. Sorry, Monsieur Guimard. It was a sign of affection from me, but Henriette, this one we didn't see. Castel Henriette. This one we saw. A cottage. This one we didn't see with all these old postcards with romantic stamps on them. Castel d'Orgeval, we saw it. Now the Paris Metro. Now we are truly approaching the end of the presentation. The Paris Metro, I will just show a few images of we already saw one, and now we see it with more details. It's literally just the entrance into the subway system. The subway inside the station is modern, but the station, I mean, the entrance into the station was designed by Hector Guimard. You see here, three types: open type, cover type, and enclosed type. Built with cast iron, they make heavy reference to the symbolism of plants. Yes, plants could inspire us indeed. 141 entrances by Guimard were constructed between 1900 and 1912, of which 86 still exist, so about 60 or so were destroyed. So yes, the plants can inspire us in the field of maybe both form and function. It's true, they have a different spirit from what we look at here and here and here and everywhere around. They have a different sensibility. But maybe this different sensibility is coming back now that plants are so important for us in order to survive, actually, to have oxygen. And also the fluidities that parametric work allow us to arrive at, you know, it's high time, so to speak, for the aesthetics of plants. Furniture. And with this, we end the presentation, this rather long presentation. Let's look at some pieces of furniture by Hector Guimard. A chair, a cart itself, with its own fluidities, probably comfortable and probably costing a fortune. But we can see in all his work the importance of ornament. Without ornament, his work would not exist. It's clear. Yes, the chairs are solid, they are structurally sound, but ornament makes them, you know, special, visually speaking. If you had such a chair in your house, you would probably just, you know, you cannot frame it, but you can put it in a special place and just look at it and never sit on it. I imagine, though, they were made in order to sit on them. This is interesting too, with 3 legs. Like a little table. A nice desk. Size for possible chairs or even benches. Graphically enticing and engaging. Another desk. Maybe the top was redone, maybe, I don't know. That's it. So let's wish him happy birthday on this day of 10th of March.